guys, welcome to the stream. Tonight we're going to be doing retro games, and I'm starting with the games that I started with long time ago. A little bit of history. I got my Atari 2600 just before my 7th birthday, I believe. So that would have been, let's see, about 1982 or so. Yeah, I played the hell out of it, and me and my nephew, we played lots and lots and lots of games of combat and all the other games together. I remember my brothers, my older brothers, um, would commandeer it, and they would be playing Space Invaders all night. And I remember one of the biggest things was when my brother Larry actually flipped the score in Space Invaders, and so he was very happy about that. So basically, he got enough scores to where it rolled it over. In any case, so tonight, what I wanted to do is trying to give you guys a little bit of a little bit of background on the Atari 2600, also known as the VCS, when it got launched in 1977, and it was a video computer system. And it was definitely a hit. I mean, the system was, the system became known to many people. If you talk to many people, they just called it the Atari. It didn't have a name other than the Atari. So it was definitely, by today's standards, the graphics are very rudimentary. They're kind of hard to look at depending on the game, and depending on when in the life cycle it was created. So the system went from 77 to, God, I want to say almost like late 90s. They kept on the system. Now granted, there was the crash in 1984. And a lot of people blame ET, which of course we can play tonight to show you. But truly, it's not that bad. But a lot of people like to blame it on them and on that, and on Atari in general. In any case, let's get the party started. So what I have here, just to let you know, is I have a front end called Play Night. And I've been doing emulation for ever, and basically since it started becoming a thing. And so one of the things that I really wanted was the ability to be able to play games and have a nice menu system, so that when I want to play something, I don't want to have to run like a command line thing or deal with like moving the mouse or something. I want something that'll work with a controller. I want something that will, have all the box art and all the different art things, and basically be able to see the game as close as as possible to the original thing. And so this front end that I've been using is pretty good. I went through and made sure that all of the art was correct for these games. So painstakingly did this for a while, several hours, but it was one of those things that my OCD sense says I have to do this. So, oh, I just noticed Fast Eddie has the wrong box art because it says for the Atari 400 and 800 computers. So I'm gonna have to fix that one. In any case, not a big deal, but it is to me. um, so some of these games, a lot of them were two-player only, and so unfortunately, playing by myself, I can't really get the most effect out of it. It would be really cool if I could, either pair up with somebody locally, or if there was a way to do remote. I don't know if there is a way with any of the emulators or not. Yeah, so what I figured I'd do is I'd kind of go through some of the games that I had, some of the games that were really cool, notable, etc., and talk about them as we go. So I'm going to start with the very first Atari 2600 game that was ever released, and that was called Combat. And so the thing is that the Combat is one of the two-player games. It's two-player only. So yeah, again, trying to play it by myself isn't ideal in any case. So the idea is that there's a lot of these games which are, it's kind of cool. They actually have the ability to have multiple variations. So if you hit the select button on the 2600, which I'm doing via like the select button on the controller, which I've mapped, you get different variations for the games. So like the first, I don't remember how many, are tank games. Then we get into the biplane type games. And then you keep going, and then you get into jets. So I believe there's 27 of these, and then it rotates back. So the basic game is this, and it's basically, the controller is, you have left and right, and then you have shoot with the fire button. All the original Atari 2600 had was the four directions and a button. You could go diagonal, but in any case, turn this down a little bit. Okay, so the game is timed, and you're just trying to get the most kills. More kills than the other person. So one of the things that's kind of cool is so you can fire, and you can do like the whole wanted thing with curving bullets. So that makes things kind of interesting, and also it blows them through the wall, which is kind of cool. So one of the things that you end up doing is you start getting a knack for shooting around corners and stuff, and it becomes definitely cool, providing you're playing with somebody else that is also doing the same thing. But it's just more of a challenge to try to do that. I mean, yes, you can get up closer and shoot, and then it just keeps going. Basically, I'll wait until it times out. But of course, this is kind of boring, playing against no one. But that's okay. Okay. So I don't remember how long it is, but it's like, I don't know, it starts blinking like it is now, and that lets you know that time's almost up. So okay, time's up. I won. Yay. So, there's lots of different variations, as I was mentioning. So they have walls and stuff, but then you start getting into modes like this to where you get bouncy bullets, which is probably one of my favorite modes, because then you can do stuff and get somebody and they think they might be protected, but they're not. So you can do bank shots, and definitely a lot of fun. Then I think this is just the arena, as in no walls. This one's fun. So it's invisible mode. So you're invisible while you're moving, but if you shoot, then you're visible. So, okay, so then they have a bunch of different invisible modes. Then we get into the biplane mode. Similar idea, except that you're flying around. You got clouds, so I couldn't tell what I was doing. So it's up and down, I think, as opposed to left and right. And you can't go faster or slower. It just goes on rails, basically. Okay, so I got him. All right, cool. Hello there, AB Early 22. How are you doing this evening? Um, thanks for joining me. I've been going over some old school Atari 2600 games. Um, so we've got different variations. One big plane versus three small planes, which is kind of a weird combo. Um, but that's the weird thing. You just have to hit one, and it's okay. Which is like it's kind of goofy. Um, then there's the jets, which go a lot faster, and you can speed up with the jets, which is kind of cool. But I remember my nephew and I played the hell out of this game, and I remember we actually set up we had tournaments and all kinds of stuff going on with this game, and we were just trying. We milked the most we could out of this game. Um, you know, it, I've heard people say this was our Call of Duty. For old people. But anyway, all the different variations, three ships, three against one. I don't think that there's any advantage really. Just to, maybe I guess it gives you more shots, but you're more. If you're the three ships, you're more vulnerable. It's kind of asymmetric, whatever. And then it rotates around. Okay, so let's see. So that was Combat. That was the very first game that came out with the 2600. And actually, the original 2600 came with a pack-in game, and that was Combat. Later, they had changed it to Pac-Man, and they might have done an ET back-in at one point. In any case, so I kind of wanted to go through here and just look at kind of some of the notable games. So Adventure, if you have you seen or read the book Ready Player One, this was a big thing in that story, and basically, it's a maze game where you're trying to kill a dragon. So you'll come out here and where you go? I guess he disappeared. Um, and then you can basically go around. The game is interesting in that the mazes are like the same screen repeated, and you don't know what it's can be really confusing. And of course, as I was saying, they have multiple variations in a lot of these games, and so I'm playing on the first variation. So okay, we got a dead end, and you got to go back. And the idea is basically you're trying to get keys and open up castles and kill the dragon and get there's an amulet, or actually I don't know what it's called. It's a chalice, I guess. And I mean there's manuals that'll probably say it's the chalice of blah blah blah, but whatever. Um, so this was a major major thing in the book, and there's a major reason for it, and the reason why is because it was actually the first game to have, as far as we know, the very first Easter egg. And that is, obviously where there's something hidden in the game, and, you have to find it. And the reason why it was a big deal is because and they talk about this in the book too, but in the movie. Um, so the company, Atari Corporation, they had a thing where they would hire their programmers to work on games, but they wouldn't give the programmers any credit for writing the games. At that point, it was just they just hired you to do the work, and that was it. And so that was because they were in charge and they could do that. And actually there was some people that got disgruntled, and they left the company because of it and started their own. But the guy that wrote this game, his name is Warren Robinette, and he created on one of these screens, and I could look it up on how to do it, and if you guys want me to do it, I can look it up. But that he created a screen that you have to do some special thing, and it would have his name written on the screen. And this is kind of cool. You can move this bridge here and be able to walk across a thing, which is pretty cool. And in any case, he has this screen. It's an Easter egg, and it says created by Warren Robinette. I think his middle initials in there too. Anyway, um, so and they didn't, the company Atari didn't had no idea that it was in the game, and so that was his kind of, you know, snub his nose at the company and go, well, you're not going to give me credit, so I'm going to put my name in it. So that was kind of a cool thing. So it was the first Easter egg. I'm not that great at the game, to be honest. It's like I haven't memorized all the mazes and stuff, but yeah, you get the idea. Yeah, a magical chalice. Okay. Let's see what else looks good in here. Here's an interesting one. Um, so Air Raid is, it even says here, Air Raid is considered to be the rarest game released for the Atari 2600. Okay, so this game, I'm not sure if it was like a mail order thing or what, but the game was insanely rare. And it actually had a special look to it. It had a handle on it. It was blue. It was very different than all the other cartridges. And they actually, it was so rare that there was only a certain amount known to exist. And I think that number was, I know it was like under 30, but it was something very, very, very low. And there was only one boxed copy known to exist, and the box right here is from that, that auction, that, when someone sold it. I believe that auction went for $130,000, something like that. So it was kind of a big deal. And so, but the cartridge itself still goes for a lot, and several $1,000s, in fact. Now, I was lucky enough to actually come in contact with one of these cartridges, the real cartridge, and it was kind of a funny story. My wife and I we were selling games on, Atari 2600 games on eBay, and unfortunately, a lot of people, they hear numbers about, all these games are worth so much money, and it's like, not really. The average game price is probably $1, if that. So there's like a handful of games that are worth a lot of money. The rest of them, most of them are not worth much. I was trying to sell them like $5 kind of thing, and it wasn't doing well. In any case, my wife happened to be on Facebook, and she was on one of those buy and sell things on Facebook for our local community. And she just hollered. She said, "Hey, someone's selling Atari 2600 and some games. You want it?" And it was kind of a joke because we were just going through all these games and going, "These aren't worth anything. Why are we doing this? Why are we wasting our time?" And it's just like, I don't want to like throw them away, but it wasn't really worth hardly the shipping, right? So we're like, okay, let me come in here and look. And I went and looked at the screen, and they had a good picture of all the machine and all the games. They had like 30 games or something. And they said on there that they didn't have the power adapter, so they didn't want to sell it. They wanted to sell it on eBay, or someone told them, you should sell that on eBay, you can make a bunch of money. And and we're like, oh, but we don't have the power adapter, so we can't test it and all this stuff. And so that was the kind of the text on the thing. And my wife showed me the picture, and I looked for about 5 seconds, and I happened to see the Air Raid cartridge. It's very unique. It's blue, and it has the handle, like I was saying. And I'm telling her, buy it. Say you want it. Yes, now. And she didn't understand what I was saying. It's like, oh well, I'll do it. And I'm like, no, now. I was like emphatic about it, because I'm like, they don't know what they have. They were selling it for $30, the whole lot, and I'm like, we need this now. You don't understand. Just do it. Tell them you want it now. Get the first person in there to say, because usually it's first come, first serve, right? Hey, hey, Desto, welcome. And so first come, first serve. And I'm like, And I'm like, I'll tell you in a minute. Just tell them you want it right now. And she's like, okay. And she goes on there and tells them, okay, yeah, I'll take it. And then they were like hemming and hawing about like, oh well, yeah, is it okay if we deliver to you maybe next week or something? And we're like, and people kept like bumping the post, and we're like, just don't say anything, just because all it takes is someone going, by the way, that cartridge right there is worth $3,000. You probably don't want to sell the whole lot for $30. And I'm like, I'm just like freaking out. I was a wreck for like this week it took for them to deliver the product. I'm like going, can we just go pick it up like right now, like now? And finally it happened. They brought it over, and I was like, of course you don't want to like act too eager and be like, I'm looking at it going, oh, okay, cool. I didn't even look at the cartridge because I'm just like, just okay. And part of me, like a little part of me, wanted to say, oh, you take 25. I'm like, here, $30, no problem. And then I remember they left. As soon as I shut the door, I just about had a heart attack because I'm like, I have this in my possession, and I'm just like holding it up like the Holy Grail kind of thing, and I'm like, it's the thing, and it's an amazing shape. There's the label's like perfect on it, and it's just like I can't believe it. I can't believe that's actually the thing. And so what I promptly did, I put it in a protective bag. I put silica in it, and I put it in my safe, and I didn't touch it for a year. I just put it in there, and I'm like going, I'm not even gonna think about it. I'm just not even gonna worry about it and whatever. So I just put it in my safe. So then about a year went by, and I was getting really into pinball at this point. I was like going, I could sell that air raid cartridge because all it takes is for people to find like a bunch of these air raids or something, and the price of them will drop through the floor. So I'm like, I should probably consider selling it. And so I put it up on eBay, and it was funny. I got so many like hater comments of going, you'll never get that much money. Cause I didn't put a reserve. I just put like a starting bid, or no, I didn't even put a bid. I put a buy it now for like $3,500. And people were like, you'll never get that much money, and oh, it's not worth that much money. Like all these guys, these naysayer kind of people. And I was like, just ignore the haters. I got comments every day about it. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. It's like, if it doesn't sell, I'll lower the price. That's the way I kind of do business on eBay. I don't usually like doing auctions. I just go, this is what it's worth. If you don't want to pay it, then I'll drop the price, and then eventually it'll sell. So anyway, it goes by. It took probably, a couple weeks to sell, but a guy in some foreign country, I think it was Germany or something, he didn't have a whole lot of feedback, but he just bought it now and did a PayPal thing right then. And all he did was a comment and said, can you please make sure that it's packaged well? I'm like, yeah. And so I ended up packaging it, and like I had this acrylic box that I put in because I didn't want like it to be crushed or anything. I sent it FedEx. I did all of the things. I spent probably a good $100 to $150 packaging this thing because I did not want it to get destroyed. And then, it's like the thought in my head of me shipping this thing, insurance and all that stuff. It's just like, oh my God. And so I sent it off, and then I'm like waiting for him to give me the positive feedback. Cause once you give the positive feedback, you're good. Right. And I'm just sitting there. It took a while. He gave me positive feedback, and he's like, yeah, great seller, blah, 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 would buy again or something like that. It's just like a generic one, nothing special. And I'm like, oh my God. But what was funny is after it sold, the same guys, that same haters that were like, oh, you'll never sell it, blah, blah, blah. They were like, oh, I would have paid that much. You should have sold it to me, and like all this crap. And I'm like going, oh, just screw off, man. I was just like, ignore the haters. But in any case, so that's my experience with Air Raid. And I ended up using that money and bought my first pinball machine, which happened to be Mustang, which a friend of mine has today. So anyway, so a lot of people will say, "Oh, I've heard of that game. I've played that game." I'm like, "You probably haven't." And the thing is, "Oh, it must be a great game for it to be worth that much." It's like, no, not really. It kind of sucks, actually. Yeah, they are thinking of River Raid. Lot of people think of River Raid. Yep, yeah. Oh, River Raid's a great game. We'll play it tonight. But Air Raid, it's like I'll show it to you, but it's just like, it's nothing special. It was made by this company Menavision, which is like it was a one hit, not even a one hit, one game. And so I mean, it's pretty lame. I mean, it's the graphics aren't great in it. It's you know, it's nothing special. I mean, I remember I played it put it on a TV so that I could record it for the auction, just so it's like, yep, it works, everything is good, yada yada. And I was just like, yeah, here's a game. This is what it is. It's nothing special, and a lot of people, oh yeah, I played that. It's like, no, probably not, especially since it's so rare. And that's the thing. That's the only reason why it's worth the money. It has nothing to do with how good the game is. It just has to do with the rarity. Okay, so speaking of what Dusto said of River Raid, I'll go ahead and go down to River Raid. So interesting thing about River Raid. One of the things that is kind of interesting in the video game development stuff is the fact that there were not a lot of female developers back then for games. There's a handful of them, really. And that's exactly right. It's you gotta have Air Raid to complete your collection. The thing is, completing a collection of Atari 2600 stuff is kind of a never-ending battle. There are so many games that were released in other countries and different prototypes and like copies, and just there's a lot of crap out there, and it's just like, oh, this is this random one with a different name or different. It's just, unfortunately, while this is like 500 or some odd games, there's thousands and thousands if you're trying to collect them all, kind of thing. So for me, I go by, my collection is obviously it's digital, not physical. I do have some physical games that I could bring them out later or something. But the idea is that, I have no interest in collecting them all, kind of thing. I was mostly interested in the main games, and on here there are the main ones, but as well as some prototypes and stuff. So this is River Raid, and it was actually made by a woman by the name of Carol Shaw. And this was her claim to fame. She had a couple other games that she helped on, but as far as I know, this is her main game. So one of the things to keep in mind is while games today are made with, hundreds, even thousands of people, depending on the game, back then the games were made by one person. They would go off, they'd build their game, and they really wouldn't work with other people, which is kind of interesting. They would do the art themselves, they'd program it themselves, they'd test it themselves, everything. They didn't have like a QA department. They didn't have any of that. So the games were made wholly by one person, almost all of them back then. And, the games, they were simpler, but it's still, this is a pretty good game as far as for the era. And so so this was made by Carol Shaw, and as I said, there was not many women that were into game development at the time, so that was kind of an anomaly. Probably shouldn't shoot those. Anyway, so This was made by a company by the name of Activision. You probably have heard of them. And they was started by a guy, by man by the name of David Crane, and he was a developer working for Atari. And as I was mentioning earlier, yeah, you do get points for it. If I don't need the fuel, I shoot it. But uh, anyway, so they so remember earlier I was saying that the developers didn't get credit for making the games, and so there was a lot of developers that were not happy with that. So they decided to create their own company, and it was led by David Crane, and we'll play one of his famous games here in a second. And he made a he started a company called Activision, and he brought a lot of developers with him. Carol Shaw was one of them, and there's several of them. And the big thing with Activision is because they didn't get any credit at Atari, he wanted to make sure that everybody got credit when they were making the game. They, by the way, hi Matt the Cutter. Sorry, I didn't say something. So the big thing there was they wanted to make sure that the people that made the games were wanting to be treated more like rock stars. You know, I mean, it's like a game developer. If you make something really cool, the typically in that era, the guy might make it for in this awesome game, but doesn't get any credit, doesn't get any more money for it. And so, you know, the idea here was that he wanted David Crane wanted and all these guys wanted to celebrate the developers. So on the games, you would actually see who the developer was on the, like if I had the back side of the box, you'd be able to see it. Or even on the front, it's like developed by so-and-so. And basically you'd be able to see who it is, and they would actually have their signature on the inside on the manual and stuff like that. So you really could see that this was a real person making this game, and it wasn't just this huge company. Obviously Activision has grown since then. But this was where they got their start. So one of the most popular games was right here, Pitfall, and made by David Crane. And this was one of the first games, I believe, that came out from Activision rather. And Activision, I got to say, to be, you know, in my opinion, they made the best games for the 2600, hands down. They, you know, the games themselves, they pushed the limit on technology. They tried to make games that were really good and not just shovelware. They wanted to make something actually, you know, really fun to play. And for a lot of people, Pitfall was one of the, it was basically the killer app for the 2600. And no. And you know, it was a platform game, obviously, but a lot of the games that were out weren't like this. You know, they didn't have like a character. One of the things that he also made Ghostbusters. You're all right. That was later, obviously. And this is, you know, there is an actual map and there is an actual end to this game. I have never ever even thought about getting there, but because it's just hard. I don't claim to be good at these games. Case in point. What I was going to say is the cool thing about Pitfall is it really actually has, you know, in my opinion, one of the first games that actually had a character that you could relate to. I mean, Pac-Man kinda, but yes, yeah. I mean, the definitely they prided themselves on the games, and I think it also had to do with the fact that they had their name associated with it too. It's like if you put your stamp of your name on something, you want it to be good. You know, you want it to be something that people are actually going to like. So there is actually a sequel to it, Pitfall 2: Lost Caverns. Now this one was interesting because looking at the game, it doesn't really look like a 2600 game. And I'll have to take a look at Marble Madness in a minute. Um, I know the arcade game I think was Atari, but in any case, the game Pitfall 2 looks amazing for the 2600. You know, the graphics on like the Activision part and all this, the music. They didn't have games back then that had music while you're playing. It was just, you know, too much and too much to do for the for it to handle. So what actually David Crane, he developed a special chip to go inside the cartridge, not the system, but in the cartridge, that would make it so that you had, it actually extended the system to be able to do things like the music and better graphics and all that stuff. So he actually, yeah, this is to be honest, this is the kind of the one of the like pinnacles of the 2600. I mean, the sound effects, the music, the graphics, everything like that. This looks very close actually to the computer versions, which, I mean, if you look at the computer versions, which I'll do on another stream, they're not that much different, to be honest. And but yeah, it's huge. I played a lot of this game. I never had this on 2600, but I did have it on the computer. And it's just a huge game. You know, games back then, they were more arcade games. They weren't platform games. I mean, things like this, Checkpoint, that really wasn't a thing. That was, I mean, I don't know if they invented the checkpoint with this game, but that really wasn't a thing. And, you know, those are the kind of things we take for granted today. This, I'm probably gonna hurt. No, I guess not. Okay, cool. So yeah, so a lot of things that came from, you know, oops. You know, so this is really just a platform game, but they didn't really have, you know, characters like, and yeah, I can't duck or anything, but whatever. Another thing that's cool, I love like the music. Notice it goes to like minor key when you die. I've always loved that. It's just a really cool thing where it's all bright and cheery, and then once you die, and now it's going back to the happy sound and stuff. So, awesome game for a lot of people. This is considered the best game out for the 2600, and I really can't argue with them. Let's see. What else is fun in here? Okay. So I was just kind of going through, just, you know, if I had stories about games, then I'll just share it. I will say that there are a lot of prototypes in here and games that never, you know, it's like, you're going to be like, I've never heard of this game. Yeah, it's not surprising because some of it wasn't released. Some of it was released in very, very small quantities, kind of like Air Raid. And some of it was like almost impossible to get. Here's a good one. Let's see, where was it? I guess it was at the top. It was a game called Chase the Chuck Wagon. So this was, yeah, you had to do mail order with Purina, the dog food company. So basically, you know, in order to get this game, you actually had to mail in, and it's actually very similar to the original mail-in for the old people. The mail-in action figures for the Star Wars action figures that you had to, you know, get the special ones. That those are like insanely priced now. But yeah, so to get this game, you had to mail it in, which, you know, is kind of crazy nowadays if you think about it. So yeah, some of these games were just insane to try to get, and so to try to find them now, yeah, that these games go for a lot. Now they probably don't go for $3,000, but they definitely go for several $100s. So one of the things that happened with the, you know, with the 2600 and this whole thing, people or companies were making games for it left and right. Every company wanted to get in on it. And so they were, you know, there was tons of companies making games. You know, it's like Chase the Chuck Wagon, like with, you know, Purina is making games. I mean, obviously they farmed it out, but the point is like that's just weird. I mean, it's not that much different, I guess, than the Burger King games that came out a while back, but it was very common back then for this kind of stuff to happen. And but one of the things to consider is that when the NES came out, when Nintendo came out after the 2600 was pretty much dead, um, Nintendo had a big thing that they wanted to do, and that was licensing. So in order to release a game for the NES, you actually had to apply and pay money to get a license to be able to make a game. So you really didn't see a whole lot of unlicensed games for the NES. They didn't have that concept back then for these games. So basically anybody could write a game for it. I mean, you had to have special hardware and stuff to be able to do it. But the idea is that everybody and their brother were making games and they just put them out there. It was kind of like the equivalent of almost bootlegs, and the fact that there was just like people would copy games. So that's what I was talking about earlier about all trying to collect them all is insane because people, there would be prototypes. I mean, there's like hundreds and hundreds of prototypes out there. It's like, yep, was never released, never released, never released. And there's a bunch of them here. Oh yeah, tons of different shaped cartridges. They just went crazy. And while it's interesting, the fact that Nintendo went, no, we are doing it this way. You must have our license and we must do this. They controlled it. So they actually I think they saw what happened with the crash in 84. Because the problem is with all these games is most of them were crap. Most of them were not worthy of putting out on them, to actually put it out. It was a money grab. A lot of it was just, yeah, let's put out a game. We'll make it and it's like make a Space Invaders clone and they just do it. And it's like, okay, cool. And to try to get money. And, yeah, the NES was very, Nintendo was very, very, critical about that. And they didn't allow that. So I think that they learned from the crash and they learned that, hey, we don't want to do it this way. We want to make sure that all the games that come out are good. And there's not all of them are good, but the vast majority of the NES games are actually pretty good quality compared to a lot of the 2600 games. Okay. So, and more about the NES later, but let's see what did I want to show? Oh, so you might have seen some of these games that are these games that are kind of odd looking, the play around or mystique games. So one of the things that was interesting in the 2600 era that would have never happened with the NES is there was a company called Mystique and or Play Around. I don't know what the actual name of the company was, but they made adult cartridges. So they made adult games for the 2600. And these things are very rare, very hard to find. I have never seen one in the flesh. I've only seen them with emulation. And we were talking about bad games, and it's like, okay, so the games were like, they were like, bad is one thing, and like adult, trying to be like risque and trying to be like, ooh, this game may have some nudity in it or may have something not so great in it. Well, these games, and I trying to skirt the line on family friendly on this channel, but these games, so just to give you an idea, the name of this game is called Beat 'em and Eat 'em. So I'll leave that to your to your imagination. Another one is Custer's Revenge, Burning Desire, Cat House Blues. They're, yeah, it's one thing to kind of like go, we're gonna make a porn game or whatever. They just kind of went crazy with it, and I was just like, they're not good games at all. And the only reason why they're collectible is because they're rare. I don't even know where you would buy them. I don't know if it would be in an adult bookstore or what. But they made actually a lot of them. It's like Custer's Revenge. Yeah, I'll let you think about what that might be, or look it up on YouTube. I don't really want to show it on my channel. um, and it goes beyond just naked boobs and stuff. So, um, but it's very pixelated. So don't say I didn't warn you. But so that was the thing. These kind of games came out, and Atari had no precedent for this kind of stuff. They just went, yeah, make it whatever you want to do. They didn't care about who would come out with games for their system. So that's how that happened. I mean, it's part of the history. So it's interesting. Okay. So here's one that's kind of cool, and this is one that Alex mentioned, the 2600 version of Ghostbusters, which was also, I believe, made by David Crane. And I will say that one of the problems with a lot of the 2600 games is they had a lot of the games, they would come out on the computers like the Commodore or the Atari or Apple and all that stuff, and they would actually be really cool. And they'd be like, okay, we need to put it out for the 2600. And it's like, the 2600 was so underpowered, and so you couldn't really do nearly the amount of stuff that you could on the computer. So they really had to, I don't even know how to get past the screen. They really had to, let's see, left, right, select. I don't even know. I'm hitting reset. I don't even know. It's like a switch or something to do it. I don't even know how to get past it. Anyway, probably have to read the manual. So they had to really, really trim the games down, and to a point where it's like, why bother? I kind of feel like they're gonna try to make a game that is so much more advanced and try to fit it into an Atari 2600 game. Most of the time it just kind of fell flat. I think with Pitfall or Pitfall 2, they were able to kind of bridge that gap. I know one of the things that Activision really prided themselves on at that point was they tried to make all of the games as good as they can and not make it so that one console was better than another. They actually wanted to try to, instead of trying to do an exclusive thing, because they put out their games on the other consoles too, Coleco and Intellivision and all that stuff. And they tried to make the games work about the same on each of the consoles, as opposed to going, yep, this one's going to be crappy, this one's going to be good, whatever. So that they actually really cared about that. Let's see. What else can I show you? So, I can just kind of go through and show you some fun games. Actually, here's one. E.T., the Extraterrestrial. So they actually made a movie about this game. I can't remember what it was called. Yep, Gorf. Kind of an interesting game. They actually made a movie about E.T. It came out, it was on Netflix. It came out a couple years ago. And basically, this game was blamed for the crash. And the crash, the famous video game crash of 1984. Well, I think truly it was, there's undue blame on ET. I think it just kind of was in the wrong place at the wrong time. A little bit of history with that is basically the developer for the game was given very little time to develop it because they had to hit the Christmas rush. They had to get the game done in order to have it be released by December or whatever for the Christmas thing. And so the game, here's the thing, the game is actually good. The problem is there's some bugs in the game that made it not very playable. And that's the problem. It's one of those games, it's frustrating to play. I mean, it was actually pretty cool for the time as far as, you run around here, you're trying to get these Reese's Pieces and stuff. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, for the time, this was actually really cool. See, the deal is what you're trying to do is you're trying to run around and get in these pits, and you're trying to find parts. Oop, he just stole some stuff from me. He's trying. You have to you fall into a pit. Okay, so you have to hit the button, and then you push up, and then you go up, and then the problem is that and it didn't happen then, but the frustrating part, and I can't remember. There's symbols at the top that tells you what you're supposed to be doing. I guess I don't know if you have to go this way. And the scientists are always, and the FBI guys are always trying to grab you and stuff. The problem is that you fall into pits a lot. And here's the problem right here. When you come out, if you don't deal with it in the right spot, you can fall back in the pit really easily. And so I got a part. Yay! By accident. I know there's like, if you go by the symbols, it'll tell you which way to go and all that stuff to try to give you a hint. But the biggest problem is that, you'd fall into pits and there is a time limit. So so you just end up the whole game doing this over and over and over and over again. I don't even know what that symbol is. Or that. Oh, okay, that's cool. It's a flower. I don't remember that one. Anyway, can I not go up? Okay, I had to get away from the flower, I guess. Anyway, you just end up in these pits, and it just gets really, really frustrating. One of those things that's the problem right there. You come out, you don't clear the pit, and you fall right back in. Case in point. So the deal is to be honest, that is what made this game not good. They actually, the game itself, you had to find all the pieces to the telephone. You had to build the telephone, go to a special spot. It actually was very involved for the time. This is, I think, came out in 83 or 82, something like that. And to be honest, if Howard Scott Warshaw, the guy that made the game, had more time, he could have made it into an amazing game. But unfortunately, he was kind of set up for failure. And unfortunately, it took the brunt. Oh, so 82. 12-1, 82. So that makes perfect sense that's exactly when it needed to launch in order to hit the Christmas season. And so, there's actually the movie talks about the fact that Atari, watch the movie obviously for more details, but the idea was they were excited about this game because it was a licensed game and, with the movie tie-in and all this stuff. And E.T. was set up to be the biggest movie ever kind of thing. And so they came out with, the game, and they were like going, we're betting the farm on it. So they actually produced more cartridges than people had systems. So they, for whatever reason, they said, this is going to be an amazing game. So they decided to go way crazy on production of the cartridges, and it was not well received. It was not, when you're dealing with physical stuff that have to be printed and made and stuff, these days digital copies are the way things go. And, you don't have to worry about, oh, well, we need to make certain amount of these. It's like, not really. I guess there's a physical copy for the dozens of people that actually buy that on PC. But truly it's not, it's a small percentage based on, people just use Steam and yada, yada. So they made way more than they should have, and the game flopped. And so they ended up burying a lot of these cartridges plus a lot of other ones, and all this crap. Basically they had to get rid of it because they couldn't sell it. And they had, it's like this whole thing of, if you're going to get rid of something, you have to make sure that no one can get it. So they buried it in New Mexico in this landfill. And so they actually made a movie about digging up the landfill and finding this out, finding the lost cartridges and stuff. And so what's funny is out on eBay, there's some Atari memorabilia that has like boxes and cartridges that are torn to hell. and I know they must smell wonderful because they've been sitting in a landfill for the last 30 plus years. Um, and so, you know, you could actually buy a piece of memorabilia there. I'm an Atari fan. I'm good. So, anyway, let's see. One of my favorite games actually is Dragonfire. I used to play the hell out of this game. Um, and it's challenging. It's it's not usually this challenging. I'm not usually that bad. Um, but the graphics in it were really good for the time. You know, as far as the you know, looking at the all the different art for all the different treasure. Um, and there's some like hidden treasure in here, I think, because you hear dings every once in a while. And you know, the game is very simple. But it gets hard. It gets harder and harder because the dragon at the end gets faster and faster and faster. And it's just one of those games that doesn't have an ending, but it's just, it starts getting to where it becomes insanely hard. Oop. Okay. Anyway, I used to love this game. You know, one of the things that was interesting to me is that I actually found a sort of, not an Easter egg, but what would you call it? A hidden thing with this game, and it was called frying. And what you would do is you would hit the power, because you had switches, you know, 4 switches. I think it was like power on and off, and like TV, the TV if you had color, black and white. And this is on a 4 switch model. They originally had the 6 switch model, but on the 4 switch model, which is the one I had, it had, you know, power, color, black and white, which mattered for some reason. I don't know. Select and start, or the reset game or whatever. Well, if you like if you pulled the power button down just a certain way and like kind of go up and down with it, you could do what's called frying, and has nothing to do with drugs. It was the fact that the game would kind of get in this glitch mode. You know, I mean, I guess today's thing would be just glitching in a game. And so with this particular game, and I haven't tried it with emulation because you can actually do it with emulation, is that it would actually allow you, I think the dragon was not there or something after you got through, so you could just clean up all of the treasure and just totally go crazy on the game and get a ton amount of points. That was one of the things I found by accident. I don't know how. I don't know what I was doing. I was a kid, you know, and I found it by accident, and I'm like, cool. And so I played it all day that way. And I tried to do it again. I could get, it was one of those things that you have to like just keep messing with it, keep messing with it, keep messing with it. Finally, you'd get like some indication that it was that in that mode, and you'd be like, sweet, now we can do it. You know, it's kind of like watching the, you know, the Cinemax and stuff with the bars, and you just have to like kind of get it at a certain point. You're like, yes, now it's cool. I can see boob, you know, same idea, but you just have to keep messing with it. Anyway, yes. Yeah, exactly. Twitter. Yes. Yeah, it was the only way you found this stuff out usually was friends, you know, word of mouth. I mean, yeah, they had gaming magazines, but they usually didn't talk about that kind of stuff. So that was one of the things I was like, I found something out on my own without like actually having anyone to tell me that I was there. But I felt very happy about that. It's like, I can cheat in the game. Sweet. Let's see, what can I show you guys that's cool. Again, there were a lot of okay games. There was a handful of great games. But the unfortunately the bad games very much outnumber the good ones. And you know, it's what it is. And I wanted to start with this one because obviously I have other consoles and computers and stuff I want to actually delve into more, but since this was my first game console, obviously it's near and dear to me. And I had a lot of good fun, you know, a lot of fun with this. And I'm looking for stuff I'm scanning through. Let's see, one thing that's kind of interesting. So this Communist Mutants from Space, odd name, but whatever. Oh, Barnstorming, yeah. Again, I'll go ahead and play Barnstorming while I'm talking. Barnstorming is an Activision game. Activision games were pretty much hands down better than all the other ones. That's just, that was the way it is. Even Freeway. Freeway was like one of the lamest Activision games, but my kids, when I showed them Freeway, and I'll show you guys Freeway in a minute, it's like kind of two-player Frogger, but it was kind of fun, and the kids actually loved it. And it's just like, this is the simplest game, but even like the lamest game was still good. So that should say something. But I mean, the graphics and stuff, I mean, are just amazing for the time, obviously. I never had Barnstorming. I never played it. I think you're supposed to go through the barns, right? You're trying to, it's kind of like Flappy Bird kind of deal. Trying to go up, down, and you get more points as you go through. Yeah, I'll be pulling up Freeway. It's, to be honest, my kids, I'm like going, really? You want to play that? And they loved it. They were playing it for hours. And that's one cool thing about with the kids is they does the button do anything? Oh, it does speed up. Cool. Whoa, ow. They play it for a long time. Can I do anything with these birds? No, I guess that doesn't hurt them. Be cool if it I'm being morbid, like grind them up in the propeller, but so I guess you're just going for score time. I guess it's time. Anyway, great graphics, and yeah, compared to the Atari games, unfortunately. But here's the deal. As I was saying about Activision, they went off from Atari. So these guys were veterans. They knew how to get the most out of Atari and the system. And I have the distinct feeling that they knew this stuff, and they probably were like, we'll hold on to these things that we know that we can do more, and let's hold off until we make our own company to do way better. Because I mean, if you compare this game to pretty much any of the Atari games, and it just completely obliterated it. Funny enough, there was a game, and I'll probably play it here in a minute, that is still contended on the score on the time. It was called Dragster, and if you guys remember the thing a few years ago where there was the whole King of Kong thing with Steve, what the hell, the two Steves, right? Or the one guy with the long hair and Steve Wiebe, they were playing, the Donkey Kong. I can't even think of the guy's name. Anyway, but he was found to be cheating. Well, there was another similar thing on Dragster. I can't remember the dude's name, but some guy said, I got the best score on Dragster. And it turned out apparently it was physically impossible to get the speed or the score that he did. They even analyzed the game, and I think even the developer said, yep, what he did was actually physically impossible. So cheater. You obviously look it up, but so yeah, this game, Freeway, it's a 2-player game. I don't think there's even a 1-player mode, but yeah, it's basically like Frogger, and all you're trying to do is get up, cross the road more times than the other person. That's really what it is. And it's good looking. I mean, the graphics are actually really good for a 2600. It's got good resolution and all that. But the gameplay itself is, you're just trying to get more points. I mean, that's what a lot of them are. But it's just so simple. Yeah, there's motion. You can go to totally do all these different modes. And then they go really fast. And there's also, I think there's a certain amount of you can change the difficulty. And that was another thing that was kind of interesting on the machine, that you could change the difficulty between easier and harder. Unfortunately, I don't have a a way to see it on screen, but basically you could change the difficulty switch. So I think one of them you get knocked all the way to the bottom as opposed to just bouncing back. But it can be really frustrating, but it's a silly game. But you know what? I remember having this game and it was kind of lame, but kind of cool too. So I don't know. It's one of those games, even like the simplest game. So I guess it was designed by David Crane. Okay, cool. That's funny. Freeway is made available on Microsoft's Game Room service. Okay. Anytime you go get ahead, yes. And that was the thing, combat, man. That was one thing I would say is combat is still, in my opinion, one of my favorite games for the 2600, just because of that. Because the fact that you could, you play against somebody else, and friendly competition, as you guys know, is a good thing. Yep, I imagine. Yeah, my dad, my dad wasn't really into games at all, but my nephew and I, he's basically a year younger than me, and basically we kind of grew up as brothers. We played the hell out of it. It was a simple game, but you don't need anything crazy, to make it a good game. So this is kind of interesting. I wanted to show you guys what Fireball. I'm not familiar with these games too much, but so one of the things that was interesting is because the system was very limited, a company by the name of Starpath, and they actually changed their name to Arcadia. They made a add-on called Supercharger. And what it was is you actually had a cartridge for the Supercharger, and it had a headphone jack on it, or microphone jack actually, and you plugged it in to a tape player. And so the games themselves were actually so you'd buy the Supercharger cartridge and you'd buy the cassettes to be able to play the game. And the cool thing about it was that the games could be a lot bigger and a lot more interesting. And to be honest, I haven't really played a lot of these games, but I do know a little bit about them. This is a paddle game, so it's gonna be really hard to play with the joystick. It's not horrible, but it looks like it's an Arkanoid / one of those kind of games. See, this one is interesting in that it's actually kind of cool. You have two balls, kind of like Arkanoid or something, but I'm not choosing to throw it. He's just grabbing them. That's kind of neat, actually. If I actually had paddles to play with, it'd be a lot easier. Playing with the analog joystick is a little touchy. King's Corners. Are you talking about are you talking about Warlords? Maybe there's a 4-player game with paddles. I think I know. I think let me pull up Warlords. I think that's maybe what you're thinking of. Again, it's a paddle game. Now, the thing that was interesting about the paddles, so the game, when you bought the original system, the ones that came out, you would get the system, you'd get a pack-in game, combat, or then Pac-Man, and I think they changed it Ms. Pac-Man later on or something. And they because they had different incarnations of the 2600, I think like 4 or 5 different ones. And the deal was that you had 2 joystick ports on it, and it would come with 2 joysticks, which is nice. And it also came with, depending on the package, you would get 2 sets of paddles. Now the paddles the way they did it was weird. You had 2 paddle controllers going into one connector, so you could hook up both sets of paddles and be able to play 4-player games with paddles. And this was one of the ones that actually did that. And so it's like I'm controlling. So that's interesting. So I'm controlling only one axis, or I can up and down do the blue, and my left and right do yellow. See, it's like that's really hard to play. But yeah, this is kind of like a four-player Arkanoid kind of deal. But you're trying to hit the other guys' stuff, and not have it you don't want to lose all your stuff. I think there's like not capture a flag, but if they get your base or whatever, you're dead. Um, but cool game concept. Um, ow. But yeah, so it's like if I had a second controller, I could play it. Yeah. Star Raiders, yes, it's one of the only games, yeah, that used the keyboard controller. Um, it was one of those things that you had to have a special keyboard controller to be able to play the game. Um, oh, I died. Anyway, you get the idea. Um, yeah, so that, I mean, definitely interesting. Star Raiders again, that was a game that was developed for the computers and then brought into the on the 2600. So it was decent, but the computer versions were better, obviously. I personally like the games especially the games on here that were never ported to anything else. There were a few exclusives. This is Yar's Revenge, which is one of the another exclusive and made by Howard Scott Warshaw. And definitely a weird game. It's a cool game. It's I know it's a favorite for a lot of people. But you're trying to it's kind of this weird thing. You can scroll up. You don't want to get hit by anything like the little dude there's there, and you have to you can once you get this, you bite it, and then you get the thing on the back there, and you're trying to break open this shield, and come on, you're trying to kill this bad guy over here. Ow. Been a while since I played it. I have it open, and let's see if I can do it here. There we go. Yay! Beats a little. And it just keeps going. Harder, faster, all that stuff. Bigger shield, all that fun goodness. Definitely a cool game. As far as I know, it has never been ported to any other console or any other machine. Let's see. What do we have? Johnson & Johnson presents Tooth Protectors. That's another one, kind of like the Chase the Chuck Wagon. It's like, okay. Yeah, and similar to that of Activision's Kaboom. Yeah. A lot of these games, again, it was a money grab. They just said, hey, we'll just copy this game and put a different spin on it, put some different graphics on it, and call it good. And that, unfortunately, that was pretty prevalent. There was not a lot of games that were original. I mean, they would come out with original game in the arcade. They'd port it to the system. It would be an okay port usually because Tapper. It'd be okay, best that they could do. And then people would be like, oh, let's copy it, and they did it in the arcades too. A lot of companies, they'd grab the ROMs and stuff off the machine and copy them, and they just change it slightly so they wouldn't get in trouble or whatever. So here's kind of interesting. These three games right here. Sword Quest. So Sword Quest was a contest-based game where you can see this thing where it says play 150,000 Sword Quest challenge. Enter by July 15th, 1983. So the idea was that you would have once you beat the game, you had to find some code, and Dusto, you might know exactly, but I know you had to find something in the game to prove that you won. You won the game. And then you send it in, and I believe they had a drawing or something like that. But they had a drawing for an insane prize. I mean, these days they would do a prize for, ooh, you get a $20 gift certificate to something or whatever. No, they gave away like these like gold like chests and like a crown and a sword and all this crap, like insane stuff. And I mean, this stuff is be worth like millions of dollars today. And I don't even know where they're at these days. I know that, you know, some of it, a lot of it actually didn't get distributed. The deal was that, yeah, just checked online. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what the value of them would be today, but insane, right? And yeah, 18 karat solid gold disc. 12. That's insane. I mean, this is not like knockoff junk. They had real, real, like insane stuff. So they had 4 games planned: Sword Quest, Water World, Fire World, Earth World, and I think Air World. Yeah, Air World. And oh, take care, Alex. Thanks for joining. Um, Air World was never released, and I'm not sure. I think not everybody. Yeah, win the $25,000 jeweled crown. Yeah, $25,000 in 1983 money, and with the gold that was priced at that point versus what gold is worth now. You know, it'd be well, actually there's probably some stuff about who actually has these somewhere sitting there. You know, it's one of these things that is the you know the holy grail kind of thing of finding these things. But anyway, I actually never played these games. There were you know, I never owned them. So did you ever beat the game? Any of them, Dusto? I played them a little bit. I've never actually tried to actually beat them. The games were kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? As far as kind of being like hard, like really try to you have no idea what you're doing and you have to just kind of, you know, bounce around and try to figure stuff out, and not very obvious, you know, not user friendly. I think you probably had to look at the manual a lot to be able to figure stuff out, and they didn't make it easy, obviously, for such a big price. Yeah, lots of guessing, and it's just like it's not really my cup of tea. But it'd been cool to have the prize though. Um, let's see, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's another one that's like they made a video game from that. It's just like I I'm not sure, you know, who would think that that would be a good video game to make back then. I mean, video games are for kids, right? You play the role of Leatherface and go around killing innocent people. Just watch out for those wheelchairs. I mean, it's just like, really? Okay. That's actually a pretty rare game. Obviously, I don't think it was made. You know, I don't think they had that many copies of it out there. Tax Avoiders. There's another one. It's like, let's play a game about, you know, it's the basically trying to get, you know, avoiding tax. It's like, you know, reading the description here. It's like, you know, black equals Eggy, the IRS agent. If he catches you, he will audit you. Yeah, it's just, that sounds like such a awesome thing for a kid. Yeah, Atari Guide to White Collar Crime. Exactly. It's just like some of these games are just nuts. You know, I was just like, okay, if you say so. Star Wars games. So I remember seeing there was a YouTuber that made you know, a whole video on Star Wars games, and I know a couple of these kind of made it in there. Star Wars games are always kind of interesting in the retro space because there's like, you know, this is the Ewok adventure that never actually got released. Return of the Jedi, Star Wars the arcade game, Empire Strikes Back. A lot of people know about this one, and I'm trying to think of what people call it's like. Is it like dogs? Or I don't remember the you're trying to hit the AT-ATs, and you had to hit them right in the right spot. Ouch. You had to like get them just right in the, like between the eyes. And and you had to just get them right. And it's got a little radar there, shows where this is the game, you know. And it's funny how like you'd spend hours playing a game like this. Ow. Oh, there it is. I guess underneath the head. Oh, it moves. Okay. I don't think there was a way to like do the thing from the movie where they lasso the legs. I know this is a very popular game. A lot of people had this game. Kind of fun for, yeah, the good old toe hook. Fun game for a couple minutes. Definitely one of those is like, yeah, okay. What was I playing the other day? I was playing one game for just hours, just having fun with it. Space Invaders. So this was the game that I remember I could not play my my Atari when my brothers wanted to play Space Invaders, because this dominated the system. You know, my brothers, they would sit there and play this thing for hours, and you know, and I gotta say, as far as ports go, this is actually a really good port. Hello, Purple Turtle. How are you doing this evening? Yeah, no, this is definitely one of the best 2600 games by far. The graphics are really good. The gameplay is great. You know, I have zero faults with the 2600 version of Space Invaders. The game, you know, the graphics could be better, I guess, but it's not. This game is very similar to the arcade. Funny enough, the arcade is actually not actually in color. That's right, take that thing. Yes, this was definitely a mainstay, and it was one of their first like games that really sold the 2600, because you know this was a very popular game in Japan, you know, when it came out, and you know, when it came here, it was definitely a popular game. It wasn't as popular as Pac-Man, of course, but it was definitely I better get these guys. It was huge, and so to be able to actually play it at home, and it was actually just as fun as the arcade. That's the thing. A lot of times, yeah, as I've said, the ports are kind of it's okay. But the 2600 version of Space Invaders, zero issues. Definitely on my top 10. Thought about doing a ranking of these, which I might still do. Come on, timing it just right. You know, there's a bit of strategy on how you want to do the which guys you want to shoot first. You know, it's like, okay, probably should take out a row or a column before going onto the row, but you have to balance between these guys because they're gonna land on me, and then it's game over. There's no if I don't get this guy, I'm dead. Yep. Space Invaders. Actually, this game, yeah, as I think I might have said earlier, I remember my brother flipping the score, rolling it over, because it only has 4 digits. Once you get past 9,999, it's going to go back to 0. And I remember them doing that, and it was just like this major accomplishment. But yeah, it was cool. It was like one of those things that, and they had a bunch of different variations. You can make your ship big and small for making it easier or harder. So we have the one of the best games on here, and then let me go to one of the worst games. And we already talked about E.T. It's not E.T. It's Pac-Man. My personal opinion, but this was kind of a stinker when it came out on the 2600. And the reason why is because, and one of the funny things, it's funny, you will hear that sound effect in a lot of movies and stuff, because it's like, oh, let's insert video game sound. And so you'll hear it, it's like 2600 Pac-Man. One of the problems here is the fact, like, what color are these guys? And it's like, what color are they now? And because they blink, it's really hard to tell if they're blue or not. Like that one, was that blue? No, it wasn't. So, and the fact that just the sound effects are nothing like the arcade. The fact that they're not dots, they're dashes. And the blinking ghosts, it was just not, I mean, everything that made the arcade version what it was really was not captured in the 2600 version. So this is one of those games that it came out, it was supposed to be this big hit, and it really didn't do much. You know, it's like it was a pack-in game for a lot of us, and so everybody had it. There's so many copies of Pac-Man, kind of like Combat. There's you know, tons of them out there, a dime a dozen. But it's just like they took the spirit of Pac-Man, I guess, and captured it. But it's the sound of everything about this game annoys me, and I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. It's just one of those things that, you know, as a kid, you know, I know you guys probably know the feeling here. It's like, you know, you go out to the arcade and you want to play a game, and your parents are like, well, you have that at home, and it's like, yeah, the version I have at home sucks. It's nothing like the actual arcade version, you know? And so it's like, this is definitely one of those cases where you're like, yay. And just over and over, nothing changes. It is definitely not the same. Some games, like certain console adaptations, were okay. This is not one of them. And it's one of those things I've seen things by the you know, them saying it's like, oh, Pac-Man's arcade is considered one of the classics. Yeah, but not this version. It's not great. I know, whine, bitch moan. Yes, I know. Okay, let's see, what else can I show you guys. So one of the things I was actually thinking about doing is, you know, after basically kind of going through highlights of stuff, and then yeah, Mario Brothers definitely is a good port. What I was thinking about doing after I kind of exhaust all of my random knowledge is to actually try doing random games on here and just play some of the games that's like no idea what games, you know, how it's going to be. Mario Brothers, yeah. Popeye, definitely a fun game. Again, the ports, you know, I think it was okay. Yes, this isn't bad. The graphics on Mario look pretty good, and it is, the thing that's cool about it is there's 2-player. Those turtles are so tiny. There is a you can play 2 players on it. Something like this, though, to be honest, I'd rather play the arcade version. And with a lot of these, so it's kind of like, it's, when you played the arcade version a lot, it's kind of like, it's okay. You know, rather play the ones that are, you know, not, you know, you can't play anywhere else. Keystone Capers, that is definitely one of my favorites. Activision game, and it was, yeah, Keystone Capers, the graphics in it, the gameplay in it, yeah, it's like the escalator versus the elevator debate. It's always like, let's just go to the escalator, just keep going. You want to try to save some time by taking the elevator, it doesn't work. Just end up just going back and forth and back and forth. Yeah, the game gets harder and harder as per usual with arcade games. But you're trying to catch the robber. But again, you know, for the time, you know, excellent graphics for the system. Okay, get the point. Okay, what else was I going to show you?
definitely Montezuma's Revenge. I actually great game, better on the computers, but it was another very early platform game. Not a lot of platform games came out at this time. This was an interesting one. Name this game. This was a game I actually owned. Um, and it was interesting because, and it doesn't say it on the box art there, but the interesting thing was that, it actually says here at the bottom, there was a contest to name the game. I guess didn't know what to call it. So the company said, we're going to call it Name This Game. And then basically the idea was that people would put in names for to come up with the most original name to describe this game. The problem is they went bankrupt before the contest got completed. The interesting thing is actually it's a pretty decent game. It's basic, but I have played this a lot. So apparently they did name it in Europe, I think, and they just called it Octopus. Not a very original name, but then basically you're just trying to get the shark and get the tentacles, and if the guy up top is running around, he gives you the air, you get air from him. Simple game, but actually I have sat there and played to this day. I've sat there and played a game like this for like 20 minutes, and it's whatever, as long as it's fun. Not sure why it has this like buzzing sound in the background. That's the game. It's not any of my stuff. But again, I can sit there and play it for a long time. I had it. So one of the things that's funny, I don't know if you guys have dealt with this. When you play a game that you used to play as a kid, you still have muscle memory from playing the game. And you can sit there and play a game like this and be like, oh my God, I think I got the highest score I've ever gotten before. And you haven't played the game in 20 years or whatever, but you still, you don't think about it. It just comes to, as you're playing the game. You don't have to think about it. And it's just, that's been something that I've always been kind of tripped out about with playing games. You played it so much that you don't even think about what you're doing. What else is there interesting in here? I don't really see. Oh, this is kind of cool. So one of the things that they did is when this one company, Zonox, they came out with these double ender carts, which I actually had one at one point. And so it looked like the normal controller, but it was like, or not controller, cartridge, but it was double sized. And so what they did was they put a label on the front, but they didn't have it on the ends. And what you had to do is you had to stick it in there or turn it upside down and stick it in the other way. So they had it to where you could play two different games on the same cartridge, even though it was technically kind of two cartridges stuck together. They had chips inside, but it was longer than a normal cartridge. And so you could swap the game. And, it's like, I think I don't know, they made their name known for having the double ender cartridges. They only had like a handful of them. One of the things that was kind of cool though, is they actually had a licensed kind of thing. And that was, it was Chuck Norris. Let me find it. Let's see. Chuck Norris. Yeah, here we go. Chuck Norris Super Kicks, which was, kind of, rare at the time to have somebody like Chuck Norris, be your guy. Your player is a martial arts expert that has a liberated hostage. It kind of interesting. Okay. So I think I'd like to try to play a random game and we'll see how this goes. If it's one of the adult ones, I'll pick a different one. Maze Craze. I don't think I ever played it. Let's try it out. So looks like a maze. Go figure. One of the things that's interesting is notice how the colors will change while you're not playing the game. That was a very typical thing to prevent burn-in. A lot of times when you finish a game, the colors would change periodically. And so that, you didn't want to have burn-in. Oh, looks like it's a 2-player only game. Well, that's not going to be as fun. Looks like you're trying to be the first one out of the maze. My guess is that I can do it. But I don't know. I don't know if you want to take any bets, but I might be able to do this. Be the first one. I don't know. What do you know? I was able to do it. That's most likely the game. So they have, that's kind of weird. It's like, all right. Oh, it's hidden. Oh, weird. So it shows it every once in a while. That's kind of interesting. So it's like you have to kind of remember, you have to watch and remember what the maze looked like. Like, oh, I don't think that's a dead end there. Kind of an interesting spin on it. I think I want to go this way. The little beeping is kind of annoying, but whatever. Go over there. Is this the right way? That looks like a dead end. Yay! Anyway, you get the idea. Let's try another rando. Let's see. Whoops. Oh, just chose it. I don't even know what this is. We need to know what it is. I don't want to play a game that's just random without knowing what the game is. Okay, pick random game. Activision Title Match Pro Wrestling. All right. Not bad. The graphics, I mean, it's an Activision game, so not surprising. Another probably 2-player only game. Let's see if I can win. Huh. All right. That's where you're supposed to come back. Well, you like pick him up, drop him off, and kick him. I just keep grabbing him if I get too close. Little sound effects are kind of interesting. A little whistle, whistle, whistle. I'm guessing it's supposed to be the crowd. Oh, that is. Oh, weird. I changed. Whoa. Maybe a tag? Maybe I tagged. One of the things that kind of sucks is without having multiple buttons, it's nice. Without having multiple buttons, they had to repurpose like all the different movements here. Like it's one of those things that, like, if you press up in the button, it does one thing. Down in the button does a different thing. And you know, left with the button, all these different things. So it's really confusing to try to figure out what each move does or what each thing does. That was weird. Throw him. Hit him. I don't think he has any help. So this is one that you probably have to read the manual to be able to figure out how to actually what you're supposed to be doing. I mean, it's like, I'm on him. Pinned. Okay, cool. Right on. Okay. Get the idea. Actually, not bad as far as 2600 era. Yeah, the thing is about these games is you really have to set the bar really low. And yeah, if you can have fun with just playing kind of okay games, you do a lot better. I don't want to play a baseball game. Gremlins. Let's see. Decathlon. That was one that was I believe it was like a joystick breaker. The reason why I say that, as you guys probably know, games with all these like track and field and decathlon and these kind of games involved taking the joystick and going back and forth with it, or hitting buttons a lot of times, but only having one joystick means that you have to go back and forth, and that's really hard to do with the one of these. I don't really want to. You can't really do that with your thumb either. You have to like. 8 points. Okay, I don't know what that means in this game, but so basically, as decathlon, you can do like all 10 events or whatever. And I don't know if you do. Yeah, you can do multiple players. I think this is one where you can pass it around the controller, since it had multiple players. Let's see, this is insane to try to play on a joypad. Now in the arcades, they had buttons on these kind of games, track and field, and they had a couple different ones. And you smack the buttons, you just smack the hell out of them in order to get the best time, which could be kind of crazy, but kind of wear and tear on the machine. Again, those kind of games were what broke joysticks. The joysticks that Atari made, specifically the ones that Atari made, were not the highest quality. They worked pretty well until they didn't. And that was typically be, after using it pretty heavily, they would break. I mean, they're plastic, the shaft on them were just plastic. You actually could break it. A lot of times the internals would break. They were cheap. I think they cost at one point like $8. They were not expensive, but they did have some aftermarket joysticks that were amazing. There was a company called Wico that came out with the command control, I believe is what it was called. And it was a bat handle joystick, and it had a button on the base and a button on the top, and the shaft was steel. I mean, it was hardcore. It was, covered in plastic, of course, but it was like you take the original, the Atari joysticks compared to like the Wico joysticks, and it was no comparison. The Wico joysticks were hands down the best, in my opinion. It was just one of those things that were indestructible, and that was kind of a big deal when you're a kid and you're playing the hell out of these games. Let's see, I can do another rando. Asteroids, sure, why not? So Asteroids kind of interesting on the 2600. I found this out after like later on as an adult playing the game. It's like a lot easier than the arcade because you can pretty much just stay in one spot. You just stay in the middle, and stuff usually goes on the left and the right. It doesn't, the randomness of the that's loud. The randomness of the way that the asteroids go doesn't really kind of go left and right. They kind of just go up and down. So the problem is that as long as you just keep shooting, you can play the game for a long time and not really move. You just go, okay, I've killed most of those, let's go to the right. Whereas in the arcade and other versions, it had a lot more randomness as far as where the asteroid would come at you from different angles as opposed to just up and down and stuff. Still a fun game. I mean, definitely a good port. The fact that the asteroids are colored is kind of interesting. Because in the arcade, if you guys don't know, the arcade game actually used vector graphics. It used a vector monitor, and which works very different than a normal monitor. Yeah, I just got to feel like works very different than a normal monitor, and the results of which, it has the special gun on it when it's firing on the phosphor on the monitor that makes it so that, for one, most of the vector graphic machines only had one gun, and so it was white on black, and but the glowing of how much it glowed was insane. Like you can't reproduce the contrast on a normal monitor, period, because it's just insane. I mean, about the best you could go would be OLED maybe, but even then, I mean, the contrast with the vector model is insane. But in any case, for asteroids, especially the first asteroids, it was black and white. And now the resolution was great, but it was black and white. Whereas, I don't know, I think when they made this version, they were like, why don't we make the asteroids different colors? And so I was like, that's kind of cool. It's got another life. So that's why it's like, yeah, well, I've played this for a while, but this is one of those, it's like, almost died. And this is definitely one that I think I'll flip before. It's fun. But again, you can play it for a long time. Especially with the amount of times you get a free life. Okay. What else is there? No porn games. Want to find something that is either I had or I really liked. That was fun. Some of these is like a lot of the U.S. games. I mean, I had the name this game one, but I didn't have a lot of these other ones. Huyan, amazing game. I love the arcade version. And the 2600 version is another one. It's like, One of the things that was cool is Activision games weren't ports. Typically, that was the thing that Atari and a lot of, mostly Atari, they really were, they said, okay, we're a game company and we have all these arcade games that, people know and love. And there's also the games like the Space Invaders, which they didn't make, but they licensed for the 2600 and they said, hey, we'll make it. And it became, again, one of their killer apps. Excuse me. But Activision, all of their games were original. I don't think they did any license. I mean, Ghostbusters, they did that, but they weren't really big on licensed games. And so they just decided to make games that were just really good. And, as I said, I still think as a whole, the Activision games are absolutely the best. If you had to pick one of the manufacturers, Activision would be it. Let's see. Worm Wars. ABS. Any games you guys want me to play specifically? I can play them or whatever here. Let's see. Q*bert's an interesting one because in the arcade, the controller was, it went, instead of up, down, left, right, it went, like in an X pattern. So what I believe on the home version, you actually had to rotate the joystick in order for it to make sense, which is kind of an interesting thing. Now, Pac-Man was not great, but Ms. Pac-Man actually was good. It was better than, it has music. It actually has music that's actually like in the arcade. The ghosts blink, but they're not as bad. They blink in some areas, but not all the time. It definitely doesn't have the bang, 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 bang. The fact that the fruit moves around the maze. It's an actual fruit. It's it's way better than Pac-Man was. There's still dashes instead of dots, but it's okay. I think it's a lot easier to tell that they're blue. And it has the sound effect where you know that it's almost done. Little music bits and stuff that definitely add to the game. So that was, obviously Ms. Pac-Man was amazing in the arcade. Better than, I mean, obviously it was actually the best Pac-Man in existence. I mean, I will still, if I see Ms. Pac-Man, I have to throw a quarter in it. I have to. And usually I'll play there for a long time too. Let's see. Hero. This was a game, I never had, but supposedly a really good game. It was an Activision game. I played it a couple times. It's kind of a maze game, but I'm actually not sure. Whoops. I just launched a bomb. That's not what I want. No, that was not good. You're trying to save people. I know that. Okay. So how do I... That's not what I want to do. So when I go down, I can't go back up, I guess, is the deal. But once I get down here, how do I... there we go. I pushed up. Well, you have to hold up for a while before it takes effect. Okay. Okay. I just went down there. Okay. Give up. Where do I need to go? Oh! I gotta blow a hole in the wall. That makes sense. Cool. Okay. That was actually pretty fun, actually. That's what you're supposed to do. Is launch it and then move away. Big brain move. Check on something here real quick. Okay. Alright. Didn't run away fast enough. I don't think I can blow that one. No. I can blow this one up. So it looks like it is it's not randomized, which I guess I wouldn't expect that from games of this era. Oh, whoa. Shut off the lights. Let's try not to blow myself up. Okay, cool. Yeah, I can definitely see why people like this game. Oops. Okay, don't want to get hit by that guy. Okay. Cool game, though. Okay. Mm-hmm. Some of these covers are not official covers because the game actually never came out. So like on a lot of these, I just grabbed, what I could to make it make it work. And yeah, I didn't want to have any games in here that did not have a cover, just because, well, I just can't have that. Looking for something particularly good. Having a hard time. um, hey, the deal is that they were great for the time. It's a bit, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's a bit rough coming back now to play some of these games, because it's just we've gone so far with games that, yeah, it's unless there's something in it that is something special that that they didn't have, that they have not done lately or whatever. Because sometimes there are some interesting mechanics that are used in some of these games that aren't used today. There was one game I remember they actually did, and let me see if I can find it. It was something maze, I believe, and it was the most technically um, interesting game on the 2600. Was it Merlin's Walls? I think this was a. I think Merlin's Walls was a homebrew. I don't think that totally counts. But they had a game that was actually 3D. Let's see what I'm supposed to be doing here. I'm not like at all. I guess I died. I have no idea. I want to say maybe he actually had to turn it sideways. So that's the deal. Yeah, it's a 3D game. But if you look, I'm going up and down. But if you turn your head 90 degrees, it's actually left and right. And you can actually go in and out and different walls or different things. And so you could actually go through. And I know the reason why they had to do it this way is the fact that there's actually a way to do turn it 90 degrees in with the emulator, which I could do if I really wanted to. But the idea of it is pretty inventive, actually. This is a homebrew game, but yeah, it's a 3D game where you can walk around, and that was, I mean, not something that was done back then. 3D was a country. No idea what you're supposed to be doing, but kind of neat. That's kind of cool. It's like by Igor in 1999. Anyway, let's see. Joust. This is definitely one I had. And one of my favorite arcade games. This is actually a pretty good port, to be honest. It's pretty bare minimum, but the fact is that the sound effects are good. The graphics are decent. You can tell things apart. It has cool sound effects, actually. Oops. They're actually not that far away from the arcade game, to be honest. Yes, Joust. The 2600 version. Which I had this game and I played the hell out of it. One thing that's kind of interesting is look what the eggs do. They just float. And they hatch midair, which is kind of crazy. There's the pterodactyl. So this is a survival wave. So I get more points if I actually survive. Oops. Yeah, normally they don't fly. They land on stuff and then they hatch and then the rider comes. Then the actually the hatch is a rider, which is kind of interesting. Um, and then the bird comes and picks them up. But in this one, they had to sacrifice that little nuance and they just have them hatch midair, which is kind of interesting. Let's see if I can get to the egg wave. And they do go. Here's the egg wave right here. And then again, they float, which is kind of odd. I don't know why they did it that way compared to the arcade, but I remember this was the only version I had played for a long time. And again, it's a good version. But I was like, when I played the original or the real version in the arcade, I was like, what? That's totally different. Yeah, I mean, the actual, this is the pterodactyl wave. Wonderful. And the pterodactyl is hard to kill. You got to get your lance directly in their mouth, which is difficult. You have 3 life. That's cool. I remember this version. I think getting 3 lives is pretty easy too. Let's see if I can kill the pterodactyl. Nope. Okay. Yeah, I love the little urge sound. Buddy and I are just. Oh yeah, Bionic Commando definitely. Yeah, there was some that was so way different. Contra is another one. Akari Warriors, I believe. All of those 3 kind of trifecta of games that were like. You look at the arcade version and it's like, huh? Okay. And some of the games, it's like, this is a port? Okay, and it just took a artistic license, I guess. Oops. But I mean, I don't think they had Bionic Commando for this. Sometimes they would do that kind of port. Oh, Double Dragon. That's one that's kind of weird. It's like, they put out Double Dragon for the 2600, which is, it was a very, very late game. It's like one of those things that's kind of like, why did they even bother? I mean, it's not bad, but it's nothing it's not gonna be anything compared to the it's just cheesy. Yeah, Double Dragon's fun in the arcade, but this is just kind of like, okay. Yeah. This is NES version is completely whoops on this. Has music going though, which is kind of, as I said, is rare for the time. This was a late game, 87 I believe it came out. But it's just like, I don't know why they did it. Money grab, probably. But as far as the resolution and the graphics, actually, if this game had come out in like 83, it would have been amazing. Because then before the NES came out and stuff, I mean, the graphics and the music and all that stuff. But, by that time, we'd already moved on. It was kind of like, it's cool, but it was too little too late, That's just one of those things. You really kind of wonder why they did certain things. And I mean, a lot of it came down to money, but somebody worked on that and was probably very happy with their work. But, if you compared that to the NES, anything on the NES, no comparison, One of the things that's kind of interesting to me is games like Centipede, which, awesome arcade game, hard to play. in that I know Dolphin is super famous. It's because it's jank and unfinished like DT, or is it good? To be honest, I'm not sure if I played Dolphin. I can actually pull that up in a second. Um, uh, but it's an Activision game, so I would be surprised if it was not good. Yeah, we had a big old long conversation about ET earlier, and how it doesn't deserve the hate that it gets. But this, I was going to say about the reason why I kind of like this version is because you can actually, they didn't have a trackball, easily accessible trackball, I should say, for the 2600. They had one for the 5200, but not the 2600. And so, if they were going to release a game like Centipede, which in the arcade used a trackball, that would be hard. So they had to adapt it to be able to be used with a joystick. And to be honest, when you're used to a joystick for playing games, going to a trackball is a lot different. And so this is actually playable with the joystick, which makes it kind of cool in that it's accessible. It's like I can sit there with the joystick and play it a lot longer than with the trackball. Yeah, the trackball could be more fun, but it's not easy. It's hard to get the exact spots together where you need to roll the ball to exact and all that. But this is actually a good. We were talking about what are the best, what are good ports, what are bad ones. This is actually one of the really good ones. Centipede, Miss Pac-Man, Space Invaders. The sound effects are actually very close to the arcade. A lot of the games, unfortunately, I think that they learned after a while that they need to actually work on these games harder to make them good. Concept, quality. This is actually plays very much like the arcade. It looks good, it sounds good, all that stuff. And to be honest, that's about the best you can do as far as the fact that they're breaking apart randomly, all that good stuff. Yeah, you're a cube, you're not a rectangle or whatever, you're not a, whatever the shooter guy is, but that's okay. They got the centipede right, they got the shape of the centipede right, which is the more important thing, Okay, so let's look at Dolphin. I didn't have it, so I don't know if I can speak to it, but okay. So it actually has a little bit of info here. All right, seagull. Periodically, a seagull will fly overhead. You'll know he's coming when the squid changes color. Okay. Have your dolphin leap up, touch the seagull, and quickly turn and chase the squid. It's the best way to gain points. Also, the game resets at the next difficulty level, putting distance between your dolphin and the squid. All right. Interesting. It looks like there's a bit of strategy. Not really worried about trying to get a high score. So let's just let me just play it. Okay. Looks good. I don't even remember this. Okay, so weird. So getting that slows me down, I guess. I do remember playing this. I remember the sound effects and stuff. Ow. So I have to avoid the seahorses. So that speeds me up. That would slow me down, I think. Jeez, it's really hard to tell where the gap is going to be. It's going too fast. Guess I can go above. Maybe. So I'm wondering if it's blue, if I can... Oh! I was thinking it's like in Pac-Man where you can go after him or something. I'm obviously not good at this game. I like the clouds and the the graphics and stuff is actually kind of neat. Again, this is one of those I think it needs practice, but looks good. Definitely would be one that would be worth playing more of. Let's see. Another thing that's kind of interesting is like games like Frogger. So Frogger came out. That's the wrong box. This is for it was made by Parker Brothers, so it should actually have a box that looks very similar to the one to the right here for the Frogger 2. But in any case, so they came out with Frogger, which was originally made by Sega, but Parker Brothers bought the rights to it, and so they made Frogger, and it's decent. No issues. It was a pretty good port. Has music. Not throughout. Usually when they have music, it's not something that plays while the game is going. I'm gonna die. Because it's just too hard to play the music and be able to jump around at the same time. I'm gonna die. There we go. Yay. Okay. Get the idea. But what's interesting is they actually have two different versions. So they have the official Frogger, which is like, so this other company, Arcadia or Star Path, I think they changed their name. So I talked about Supercharger earlier. And so this was a Supercharger game. And it's like way better than the other one. It doesn't have music. It does have music during. Okay. Whoops. So this is like a much more faithful port than... oops. Didn't do that. In fact, it has music playing. It has like basically all the stuff that the arcade version has. Does a little bit of blinkiness, yeah, but it's not horrible. I mean, even the songs are the same. I've got a little thing going on because I'm using a analog joystick. I think it's going diagonal. It kind of messes things up a bit. Yep. Yeah. See, this was, I was mentioning earlier, the Supercharger version, which is interesting in that the Supercharger was, you hooked up a tape player to your Atari, and then that's how you loaded the games. So the games would come on cassette. And so you had to hit play on the cassette, and then it would load it onto and into memory, and it would take a while. Cassettes were always slow to read from, so the graphics were good. Yes, so the Supercharger, look at that guy go, jeez. The Supercharger was a company called Arcadia or Star Path, I think is the original name. They decided that they wanted to have more space than what you could fit on a cartridge. So they made this piece of hardware that it would have like a microphone jack on it. Anyway, they'd have a microphone jack on it, and you plug that into a tape player, and you'd hit and then you'd load the game that way. So The cool thing about it is on a cassette, you know, it would hold a lot more storage than what you could hold on the cartridge. And so, you know, and they had used cassettes on computers at that point as well. So it wasn't that much of a stretch. The fact that they attempted it with the 2600 was kind of cool. And they actually made good, probably 10 games for it. I actually had one at one point. I didn't have it when I was a kid. I had it as an adult when I started collecting. Um, it was kind of neat, but yeah, it's one of those things that, yeah, it's kind of a pain to have to load. Good too hard. It's kind of a pain to have to hit play and wait for it to load and wait. And again, because that's slow. I remember on my computer, I had a cassette drive on it, and anytime I had to load something from cassette, it was just like, seriously, you start it and then you go away for like 20 minutes or something, 10, 15 minutes, a while it was loading. Yeah, that's pretty cool. This is, as you get higher up in levels, this is what you got. Then we get the one log that takes forever to get it here. Come on. Yeah, I'm almost out of time. Come on. Gotcha. Yeah, see, this is like infinitely better than the other version. But, you know, nice. Yes, it did. Now, some of these songs I heard, actually I read, or somebody told me that they were actually, there's a snake there. And there's also a thing in the water, which I'm not sure what the hell it is. Anyway, a lot of these songs are actually like Japanese nursery rhyme songs, or whatever you would want to call it. Uh, you know, kids songs. All the songs are the same as in the arcade. The graphics actually look really good. So, I mean, this was, they were able to take the capabilities of the 2600 and extend it, which was really cool, actually, if you think about it. They made their own expansion, basically, by being able to say, hey, we're going to put it on a cassette. And so actually there was quite a few of them. I have no idea what that water guy was. I have never known what that was. Yeah, music that doesn't give me a headache. Yeah, I mean, a lot of music is kind of but that was actually the music from the original game. And I mean, yes, it was toned down as far as it only had one voice. You couldn't have, you know, didn't have all the songs going, or like all the voices in the track going. But yeah, it was, for a 2600 game, pretty damn good. Um, but yeah, that was a supercharger game. Phaser Patrol, and play some supercharger games. Don't know anything about it. This one looks like it might be. No idea. This is probably what I need a manual for. No idea. Let's try again. Let's see. Party Mix. So I think this was like it was like a party game, but also on the supercharger. So, don't know what we're doing. No clue. Okay, it uses the paddle, which means that I can control. So it probably uses 2 paddle controllers or 4 paddle controllers, because I can, if up and down does something with the yellow guy, and left and right does, or which is it? Left and right, I think, does something with the middle guy. It's one of those things that much easier if you have the paddle. Let's see, not Party Mix. Let's see what else we have in here. That's a supercharger game. Definitely had a specific look. Weird Sonic Glass. The weird slotted graphics are something I've seen before. The slotted graphic art. Are you talking about like how it's like it looks like there's a gap in between the lines? Is that what you're talking about? Oh, yeah. Sometimes that kind of stuff was made that way because of limitations. And the thing you got to realize is that making a game for the 2600 is hard in that it only had, I want to say, 128 bytes of RAM. Um, and and the size of the cartridges were usually only 4K. So 4,000 bytes. I did say bytes, yes. 128 bytes of RAM and 4,000 bytes of ROM. So your entire program had to fit in 4K, including all the graphics, everything. They did have 8K cartridges as well, but at the beginning they had 4K cartridges. So that's the thing. You had no, every little thing was a big deal in the game. I played this earlier. Um, every bit mattered in these games, and so the guys that were able to make the games like amazing games, you have to get hats off to, because they had made they made it so that they could squeeze out every little bit of performance and capabilities from the system. And and even then, like, looking at some of the graphics here, I've actually done a little bit of 2600 programming, and just to try to get things like that guy up there, how all the colors he has, that's hard. It's like that's difficult. I mean, the guy, whoever made this, was like probably like very happy with that guy, because trying to make them look good is hard. All the systems were like that. Atari stuff was one of the oldest, but NES, they still had the same problem. So that's why you see, like, in Super Mario Brothers, the cloud looks the same as the bush, because it is, and they just recolored it. And that was a very common thing. Anything you could do to save space, it was huge. And so they used every trick in the book to try to make something good. And watching, I did the stuff I was watching and learning from. It was like the basics, not like the extreme tricks that they used. But yeah, when you go to try to program a 2600, which I actually am planning to do a video series on, because I'm crazy. It's you have to do all these little tricks to be able to get there. It's actually not a bad game. It looks, the graphics are actually really good as far as all the colors and everything. I mean, it's like a Space Invaders type of game, but still a lot of fun. I never had a supercharger when I was a kid. That was one of those things that I didn't even know existed until, like, as an adult. This is kind of interesting. So they had KidVid, which is an interesting thing, kind of like the Star Path, but instead of and I don't think this will work. I doubt that it has a cassette thing on it. Let's see, it's not doing anything. So what it would have is they would record, like they would use a cassette, but instead of using data on the cassette, this isn't doing anything. They would have people doing music or audio stuff on the cassette. So the idea is that you would be, playing the game, and it would play from the cassette when needed. And so I actually had stuff like that when I on my computer, with like learning languages. So they would actually use the cassette. they would actually put the program. It wasn't a game. It wasn't, the program for learning on the cassette in like the data portion, and then they would put the audio, like all the speaking stuff, because obviously it's a recording medium, and they would have all the speaking. It was like bonjour. You're learning French or whatever, and don't laugh at my pronunciation. Anyway, um, and they would have all that stuff on there. And so the cool thing was doing voice back then was not a thing. I mean, it was very, very rare. And if you did have thanks. Um, if you did have better, like if you did have some synthesized, or not synthesized, but sampled voices, they were huge as far as like the space it would take up. So there'd be no way you'd be able to. I mean, if an entire sample would take up the entire 4K. So they didn't really do that much. I mean, you could, and there are some games that did, but it was pretty rare because it would just take up too much space. So, but with the cassette, they could go crazy. They could make 90 minutes of audio and put multiple cassettes and whatever the heck they wanted. So I remember having like conversational German or French or one of those things that somebody bought for me, and it had a whole bunch of cassettes in there, and you plug it in and you fire it up and you listen to it and you say it as you do it. It's just like basically using like Duolingo today. But this was back in, 85 or whatever. So a while ago. But so, I mean, they did some of that stuff with the 2600. So they had mostly kid games. It's like Kid Vid that I was looking at. So they had like Berenstain Bears, and Smurfs had one as well. They only had a couple of things. Yeah, I mean, seriously, there was a lot of innovation that was done with this. There's actually a product they were working on called the Mind Link that was actually somehow you put it on your body and it would find your I saw I was actually playing just a minute ago that looked like Space Invaders. um they actually had a thing to where you could control something on the computer on the game with your mind. Well, it's actually not. It's actually I think I looked into it at one point. It's like a thing. It just goes based on touch. It wasn't like something you like, you don't have electrodes or anything like that. But there was actually, I was looking at a prototype for a game that used it was tele something. I don't remember the name of the game. I was like, I don't think I can play that because I don't really have that interface. So, yeah, here's the kid bid. Um, they did a lot of educational games. Basic math. So it's like, now I think you had to have the controller or the keyboard controller to be able to do this. I don't even know how it works, but it's like you could, the one of the things that they were really big on is to, so one of the reasons why the Atari VCS is called that instead of the 2600. Originally it was called the VCS, which was Video Computer System, not like the game system. So they actually had games on here that were meant to be educational. Like Atari was really big into that. And so they put out these games like Big Bird's Egg Catch and the Basic Math and Brain Games and all these games that were meant to be educational. And so they built a keyboard controller, and they had a thing to where it just had like, it was a numeric keypad is all it was. It wasn't a full keyboard. It was literally like, 0 to 9 plus like star and like a couple things or whatever. And they actually had overlays, which was kind of cool. You could have like a different games, and there was only a couple games that used them. One of them was called Star Raiders, which is down here at the bottom. Another one that was interesting is basic programming. So they actually, I don't have it here, surprisingly, but they actually had basic programming as a cartridge. I have no idea how you were supposed to use it. I do know at one point they were designing a keyboard interface to be able to plug into the 2600. I don't know if that was supposed to use that. It was one of those things that yeah, they were trying to do that. They were trying to make it so that they were really trying to make it so that it wasn't just a game system. It was, but they were trying to push the envelope a little bit. I think to try to kind of say, look, parents, you can buy this and you can teach your kids how to do math and, languages and all the, stuff. And it's like to try to kind of appeal to, the parents that bought this stuff for their kids. So, and I think to some extent it might have actually worked. And they actually had a lot of that kind of stuff going into the computer stuff as well. While, the 8-bit computers, which I'm going to have a lot of fun with soon, not tonight, but at another stream, I imagine I'm going to have several because that's where the sweet spot was for me. And, but that was my first computer. That's where I learned how to program. That's where I started this is the console that I cut my teeth on, but really the computer was where I was able to take that and really, do something with it. I always wanted to make video games, because, well, video games are awesome. And so that was my chance to be able to do that. Now, how successful I was, that's for another time. But the point is that, they were really big on education and trying to kind of push the whole idea that it doesn't have to just be pretty much, it doesn't have to be just fun and games. It can actually be useful information, useful stuff. And so like a lot of the computers came with, what you got? A lot of the computers came with a basic programming, the basic language, and you can just program, which I actually still have one of those computers. I could fire it up too. What's your request, Miss Subnot? What do you want to play? What do you want me to see me play, I guess? Alien. Okay, let's check that out. Okay, so I should have known. So one of the things you got to realize is the box art looks way better than the games. So there you go. It's like a Pac-Man clone. This is what I was saying earlier. It's like, ooh, you can shoot at them. Yay. Bad Xenomorph. Even it has, funny enough, you can hear it in the background. It has the Pac-Man sound. The siren. It's just like, yeah, exactly. It's just like, this is very common. I mentioned this earlier in the stream, but companies would see success with the game, and then instantly there'd be tons of clones of it. Yeah, the woo 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 woo, the siren sound that is in Pac-Man, it's like, really? It's like the maze. It's like, yeah, different colors. Yeah, they come out of the bottom instead of the middle. And there's only 3 of them, apparently. Yeah, the deal is that, actually, if you look into it, software is kind of interesting in that respect. You can copy an idea totally and put out a game that works pretty much the same, as long as you don't call it the same thing, you don't use names that are exactly the same, and you don't use anything that's exactly the same, as in art. Now, in this with this day, it may be really hard to be much different, But the deal is there's not much even protection these days for this stuff. So you can take a game idea, copy it, and put out your own. Oh, it's a different style. Anyway, you can put out your own game, call it something completely different. And you can totally knock something off. not a problem. You just can't call it the same thing, because then you get into trademark laws. If you copy it like identically, identically, then they can get you on copyright. But if you use your own art, your own audio, your own sound effects, your own everything, and it looks totally different, but it has the same exact mechanics, not a problem. Now the only difference there is if the company has patented that. Now there are some software patents out there, but software patenting really, and it's a whole other conversation, but it's kind of it kind of gets into a not so great area. A lot of people really don't like software patents. I'm one of them personally, but the idea of going, nope, this is the thing that we made and you can't copy it, and that it costs a lot of money to get that, but there are companies that do it. So there's certain things that you don't see anywhere else because they're patented. Let's see. What else? Let's see if there's anything kind of interesting in here. Unfortunately, again, when we get to the 8-bit line, it'd be a lot cooler because I've got a billion, ones I can play. And what I'm thinking about doing here is in the last 15 minutes or so, I'm thinking about giving you a little bit of a taste of the 8-bit stuff. I wanted to concentrate on the 2600, but I'm kind of at this point going, is there anything more I can talk about or show that would be kind of interesting? And kind of getting a little bit to the end of my my knowledge here. Killer Satellites. This is another Starpath game, or Supercharger game, I should say. No idea. Okay, shoot. Okay, cool. It looks like Defender, basically. Again, it's like one of those things that it's like, well, that's not good. Yeah, it's basically Defender. I don't know if they're trying to grab people from the ground or not, but yeah, it looks good. But again, it's very derivative, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's good artist copy or whatever. It's like great artist steal or whatever is the quote for that. Just like these days, innovation is not a big thing. Now, at least these days, they usually do a little bit better job of hiding it. Now, this isn't, this definitely they use, but it uses different graphics, and the mechanics are the same. You go back and forth, up and down, you shoot things. And they come down and probably try to grab stuff from the ground. Now, the graphics on the bad guys look actually really good. They've a lot of colors and stuff. Yeah, that's the thing. There weren't. They really concentrated on like arcade style games. They concentrated on arcade kind of games. And that, to be honest, arcade games were what was a thing. Platform games really weren't a thing at that point. It was mostly like shooter type games. Arcade style, RPGs really didn't exist at this time. I mean, they did in the computer world, but you were not going to see that on a console like this. Way too hard. And so, I mean, it was kind of like they had a limited amount of mechanics they could do. And when you see something truly original, it's like, wow, that is cool. And it's rare. I mean, in especially on the 2600, because most of the stuff was like, okay, how do you describe your game? And it's usually like, oh, it's Space Invaders with blank, or it's Defenders with houses. It's Defender with houses. I mean, that's kind of what this is. I mean, the graphics look different. Okay, cool. The bad guys look kind of interesting. One of them looks like a teddy bear and stuff, which is, I guess, kind of cool. They're interesting looking, and the fact that they were able to use more, the graphics there are really what are the key thing. The bad guys graphics. Those kind of graphics are really hard to do on the 2600, and so that's one thing that's kind of cool. But to be honest, I think they would have done better had they, this is my own particular critique. I think they would have done better had they put more graphics on the spaceship, your character. And the reason why is because you see you more than you see them. And, having cool graphics on your character, personally, I think would be better than just their bad guy characters. Little teddy bear is kind of cool looking, I guess. I should see what happens if they go to the ground. See what they do. Do they take the houses or something? You just lose points or something, or you lose life or something. I guess they're destroying farmland or something. The little dudes are actually pretty cool looking, but looks like a pineapple or something. You just let a family die. I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.